Hello, everybody, and welcome to Mystical Awakenings right here on KGRA. I'm Deb DeRoos, and I'm your host tonight. RJ's, hanging out at home doing the whatever he's doing, but he'll probably be back in a week or two. So I have a really awesome special guest tonight who is also a dear friend. Most people know who she is and what she's all about. So I'm just going to give you a brief introduction. She is the author of House of Darkness, House of Light. It's a trilogy. She also co-authored in a Flickr with George Lopez. She has done so many, many things, including growing up in the Conjuring house. So she has a lot to tell about that. Some of her newest works are A Wonder to Behold. That is a book that she began, I believe, in 2018, and it's Guideposts for Intergalactic Engagement with Humanity, True Labor of Love, Honoring the Galactic Family of Light. She's an amazing woman. I know you already know who she is, but the last part of her bio is what's always, I've always been impressed with all the other stuff, but the last part of her bio is how I really know this woman. She's an outspoken human rights advocate and animal rights activist, and everything that she does with love. That's the person I know. It's her genuine desire to spread positive messages and positive everything. She's a remarkable, upbeat woman of these times who is making a difference in our world. So I'm really pleased and honored to welcome the one and only Andrea Perron. Hi, sweetheart.
Hi, my darling, my star sister.
Oh, so good to see you.
I know I'm going to share something with your audience. When we had to separate a few weeks ago at Houghton Lake after the UFO contact, we both noticed that it's always difficult, but whenever we're together and then we have to part ways, it always sucks. But it was particularly difficult because I was there some extra time this year, which I needed desperately to spend with you. And so it was hard to part ways. And a couple of days later, I said, oh, the metaphor, it just came to me, because we kept saying it was like, we were having to pull apart from each other. And it felt like we were stuck, and it was really tough. And I said, I got it. We're two gummy bears that got left in a package in a hot car. And in order to separate the gummy bears, they literally had to be peeled apart. And so I will always now, forevermore, remember that we are two gummy bears with our arms wrapped around each other. And when it's time to, move on in the universe and go do the next thing for each one of us, that, it's like pulling apart two gummy bears. And the thing that's most wonderful about that is that they're both, they're so sweet, and it's the sugar, it's the sweetness that makes them cling together.
Right. And how can you really separate two gummy bears that have melted together? You have to leave remnants of each on the other.
With the other. Yes.
Yeah, that's perfect. Perfect. My gummy bear sister, I love you.
Love you too.
Well, I was thinking back, and a lot of people don't know the history. I believe that before we met in person, we met online.
Mm-hmm.
We were both getting ready to launch our first radio show.
Yes.
Yours and mine were so similar that I don't know how we ended up talking. I think we saw one another on a different show. Is that how that happened?
I don't even remember. I do remember that you came on my show and I came on your show, right. and it happened so organically.
It did.
That when I actually met you in person,
Oh,
we just immediately embraced each other, wouldn't let go of each other, just vibed at such a high frequency that
right.
literally both of us were shaking.
We were. We
Yeah.
were. But, bringing together, and I think about that sometimes, mystical awakenings and a world awakening.
Yeah.
And we didn't talk before that.
Nope,
So
we didn't.
neither of us had a clue what the other one was doing. I didn't know you, you didn't know me, but we're both doing these new shows on awakenings.
Yes.
And we, in discussing it and saying, okay, you're going to be my first guest, we
Mhm.
realized that the message was almost, well, pretty much the same.
Yeah, it
There
is.
was
I
not a
mean,
big difference.
the delivery is slightly different, but literally we are sharing the same message. And
Right.
that's so much the beauty of what we have together, because we can literally finish each other's sentences.
Yeah.
You don't have that with everybody. Just
No,
don't.
no. But I think it's a true example of how this universe works.
Yes.
And you
Agreed.
are a true example of how this universe works. So I just wanted to hit on that a little bit tonight because things, people come together exactly when they are supposed to come together.
Yes, I agree.
And the working, I mean, everything that led up to our shows, to us being friends, to meeting and that high vibration, it was all set in place
Yes.
before we even knew about it. And here
Yes.
we are, what, 9 years later?
Yeah, yeah, 9, almost 10. And both of us are so open to the notion of living into our destiny that we
Right.
just remain in a perpetual state of cosmic flux,
Right.
and I've always maintained that the universe is all fluxed up. It is.
It is. It
And
is.
I'll give you a perfect case in point, where it laughed and laughed and laughed at me. Monday, as you know, was my birthday this past Monday,
Yes.
and I
Happy
spent,
birthday.
yes, thank you. And I spent the bulk of it traveling from Phoenix, Arizona, back to Orlando, Florida. And I got there like super early because I didn't know what security was going to look like. And I had already gone through a security nightmare the previous Friday as I was making my Thursday, making my way out to Phoenix was a disaster. So, I shed that dead weight as soon as I landed and said, I'm not going to let this experience taint my anything about this day. No. Um,
Good.
and just shook it off like water off a duck's ass, I guess is called. I don't know what the phrase is. That sounded right.
That sounded right to
Yeah,
me.
yeah. And you know how they shake it, and it's
Yeah.
just and it's gone. It's just gone. Um, and yeah, see, I still have gravel in my throat from the
Mhm.
desert, which was beyond gorgeous. It was so stark and
Mm.
ragged and rugged and austere and breathtakingly beautiful. And it's like it's a moonscape with mountains. I mean, it was just where I was absolutely beautiful.
Mm.
Um, and So anyway, I making my way home, and um, I didn't have a seat assignment on my flight, and I didn't even notice until about 20 minutes before it was time to board. And I had the ticket, so I knew I had a seat, but I had no seat assignment.
Right.
And so the gentleman who was redoing my ticket for me at the desk said, well, would you prefer a window seat or an aisle? And I said, oh, always a window, because that gives me a place to lay my head so I can look out and look down on the earth. It's such an interesting perspective. I didn't start going on about hanging out with the Galactic Family at 36,000 feet. Not everybody's ready for that.
No.
So, I get my seat assignment. Turns out I'm in the very last row of the airplane. And I plop myself down in my seat, and in comes a gentleman sitting in the middle seat beside me. And of course, I was cordial to him and, welcomed him. And we started talking. Turns out I spent 3.5 hours in conversation with a NASA scientist who was on his way to Cape Canaveral.
That's wonderful.
And
the universe at work
laughed
again.
And laughed and laughed. And the best part is, and I won't say his name, but the best part is I would say about halfway into the flight, I got up the courage to look at him and say, is there anything going on at NASA that you would like to share with me? And after I had a full-length conversation with him about ghosts and spirits and extraterrestrials, and he was all in across the board, just across the board, everything that we discussed. He's like, yeah, I know about that. Yeah, I've read that. Yeah, I did that. Yeah, I go, okay. I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God. How grateful am I? We're kind of keeping our voices down so we don't freak everybody else out. And I said, do you have anything that you want to tell me? And he said, well, of course I do, but I can't. And I said, well, you telling me that tells me everything I need to know.
There
you just validated everything that I have discovered from other sources. And he just winked and smiled and squeezed my hand a little bit. Then he pulled out pictures of his family. We talked about his dog, and we talked about his wife, and I talked about, Peanut and my family, and we really, really, really got to know each other. And when we parted ways at baggage claim, we embraced each other like we had been friends for multiple lifetimes. I've got all his contact information. He walks up to me at baggage claim. He's like, oh, look, my wife just ordered all of your books.
Oh my
like, okay. Okay.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. That is so perfect. I mean, what more could you ask for?
I know.
Seriously. And another example of the universe at work, putting you two together, and the unspoken answer.
Yes.
Speaks volumes.
It does.
Just speaks volumes. And that gets me so excited. When we talked on the phone about that, and I was so giddy about it. It's like, oh my gosh,
I know.
because
I told you his
name, a lot.
Yeah, I did. I don't want to put it out in the world, protect his anonymity, because he was kind enough to be probably more forthcoming with me than he should have been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's okay. So now protect him, and it's all good.
Yep, it is.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. So, people know you as the Conjuring woman, or the crazy UFO woman. I take the crazy out of there because you're
weirdo. I am among the weird. WYRD. Yes. Remember when Tenny did the etymology of the word weird? Those that determine their own destiny do not live under the thumb of others.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm definitely a weirdo. And so are you.
Oh, exactly. That's why we get along so well.
Well, we call our own shots in this world. I don't let anything stand in my way. I don't.
No. And that's one of the things I've always loved about you. And as I went over your bio earlier, thinking about the show, I thought, some of that is wonderful. It's so impressive. But the main Andrea Perron that I know and love is that woman with the big heart and the uh, the power and the enthusiasm to make a difference in this world, to speak up for those who don't have a voice, and to stand up for those who don't know how, and hold the hands of all the others.
Yeah.
That's the person that I want everyone to see tonight. Is you're more than the Conjuring house, and you're more than a ufologist. And your type of ufologist is really different because you embrace it in such a different way.
Oh
You
God,
know,
I love them. I
I
higher
knew
love them.
exactly, exactly. And a lot of people study them, do the research, but you see to it that you and anybody that comes in contact with you that wants to has a relationship with them.
Yeah.
And that's very different.
Yes.
Very different. So, thinking back, I'm going to ask you what, and I know you've told this on the air before, but I just love it. So, because it goes back a ways. What was your very first UFO or otherworldly being experience?
Well, hold on. Let me swig down some organic lemonade here.
You
I
have
swear
it.
to God, I still have desert sand in my bronchial tubes. I swear to God.
Probably do. You were out there for a little while.
I was, and it was windy.
And I have no excuse, but it must be that gummy bear thing.
It must be that gummy bear thing. Yeah. Well, the first thing that happened was that I met a full body apparition that I did not know was a full body apparition when the day that we were moving into the farmhouse. And I don't remember ever seeing anything, ever before that. I was 12. Um, and he looked like complete total flesh and blood to me. And he was staring at Mr. Kenyon. And as I walked past him, I said, "Good morning, sir." And he just looked through me like I was the ghost and I was invisible. And he was fixated on Mr. Kenyon. And then my sister Christine saw him. And then Cindy saw him. And as we're walking through into the kitchen to bring boxes to mom, and she had April with her in the kitchen unpacking and then repacking Mr. Kenyon's things out of the kitchen cabinets because he wasn't even remotely ready to move out. And we were moving in. And and so mom was, needless to say, mom was busy. And when Nancy walked into the room, she leaned over to Cindy and she said, "Sin, did you see that man with Mr. Kenyon?" "I did, but then he disappeared." And Cindy just kind of looked at her and they just went out the kitchen door to go get more boxes and get that truck unloaded. And it was chaos and bedlam and moving day. And there were all kinds of people coming and going through the house. But we, the 4 of 5 children, all saw him. And then we saw him again later. And he was standing not 3 feet away from my father. And my father didn't see him at all. And that's when we knew that we were living in something was entirely different about this house than any place that we had ever been.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, he kept showing up. We kept seeing him pretty frequently. And I even described him in the book as a peripheral member of the family because he was around kind of watching over us, and none of us felt any kind of threat from him at all. We didn't feel fear of him. He was just so pleasant and, you know, I don't know, his vibe was just sweet, I
Right.
guess is the best way to put it. And so, there was no issue with that, but we didn't know how to refer to him. So Nancy named him Manny. Now, remember, this is in January of 1971. Okay. Nancy called him Manny because he was a man, and that was the only name that came to mind to a 10-year-old. And she just referred to him as that. And we all knew who she was talking about when we would talk about him privately. Interestingly enough, a few months ago, Cody Ray Desbian and Satori Hawes, who have developed a mind-boggling method of connecting directly with spirit, were at the house, at the farmhouse. I wasn't there that night, but God knows I heard about this from multiple sources, and it is all filmed. And so I found out that they connected. They do their thing where they hold each other's arms. Oh, look what I'm still wearing.
Oh,
UFO
wow.
Contact, Michigan. Yeah, baby.
Love it.
I just can't bear to take it off. Every time I look
No.
at it, it just takes me right back there. So anyway,
Part of the gummy.
I know it is part of the gummy. Yep. And they were having a session at the farm, and a spirit came through, and his name was Joseph. Now, when my mom did the history that she could on the house, the only one that she could find that had actually died in the house of a man of that age was named Johnny Arnold. And he drank horse liniment because of the high alcohol content. It was a cheap way to, get a buzz. And he was laying up in the eaves of the house drinking horse liniment. And something ruptured in his stomach, and he bled out, and he died. And we just assumed that the spirit that we were seeing in the house was indeed him. That was Johnny Arnold. So the spirit comes through, and he spells out his name is Joseph. And everybody looks at each other like, do you remember reading anything in the books about a spirit named Joseph? And nobody did. And so he started tapping. That's how they get their attention. Right. And he said, he spelled out this sentence: Nancy called me Manny. Yeah. Nancy called me Manny. 50 years later. 50 years later. Okay. We're still learning things about that extraordinary house. Still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so amazing. And, one of the things that I wanted to ask you, since we were talking about the universal connections,
yes.
Do you feel, and I believe you do, that the universe did put you there? Your family was supposed to live in that house, not only for the spirits of that house and to help them, but to help wake all of you up and open you?
Yes, and then ultimately to share this story with humanity. Because when I embarked on the project originally, like a bell went off in my head. It was like a wake-up call, like an old-fashioned alarm clock. It's time. And I don't even know. I mean, I hadn't even thought about it prior. And then all of a sudden, it's all I could think about.
Mm-hmm.
And that was in August of 2007 when I went to town the first day of my vacation, and I got an index card, pack of index cards, couple actually, and a recipe box. And I started writing down certain events that had happened to me that I remembered, particularly vividly, and thought I'll start there before I told anybody in my family that I had done this. And when I finally did confess to my mother that I had started writing a book, she said, "That's wonderful, honey. This is not the kind of story one should rightfully take to the grave." She never even asked, "What's the book about? What kind of book? What kind of story? Is it fiction? Is it nonfiction? Is it?" She knew. She knew it was time. And I give humanity probably more credit for intelligence than some deserve. However,
Some humanity.
for the most part, people are really smart, and people in the paranormal are really smart, and they just get it. And I didn't know there was a paranormal community. I had lived my life completely separate and distinct away from it for decades. Every now and then something would happen, that tap on the shoulder, we're still here, but it was at that point I was so inured to spiritual contact that it was just normal. It was natural, not paranormal, not supernatural.
Right.
And so I just went on about my life, trying to find my way in the world, doing the whole fake it till you make it thing. Because as I have told you and many others, I felt like a complete total misfit on this planet. And I knew that I must be here for a reason, but I didn't know what that reason was. And I was like a vagabond. I was, I just went from one thing to the next to the next. I owned a restaurant. I owned a jewelry store. I was a member of the theater company of Rhode Island for decades, couple of decades, did I don't know how many shows, finding it actually more comfortable to play other characters and to immerse myself in them and just be them, a few nights a week. And then on show weeks, it was just better for me. And it was a way to kind of live outside myself. I had to memorize an entire script of lines, not just my lines, but everybody else's, because that's just how that goes. You have to know what's coming before you know to speak. And it was one big fat distraction to keep me from delving deeply into what happened to me at the farm when I was 13. And as the eldest of 5 little girls who was in charge of them and helping to keep them alive, along with my mother, because kids, farm, barn, trees, creek, keep them alive. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, head count at one. And for some reason, I was standing all alone in the middle of the expansive front yard at the farmhouse. And I had just turned 13. It was October. And all of a sudden, the bright, clear blue sky filled with what looked like enormous cotton balls of every conceivable color, and then 100 colors you've never seen. And I just looked up like, no, what is this? And then I distinctly remember that all sound stopped. Like even singing birds, passing cars, I heard nothing. It was like I was in a vacuum. And I saw the point of the vessel as it was blocking out the setting sun over my head. And I just raised my head up and my eyes to the skies, and a ship that I can't tell you how big it was. It was absolutely enormous, enormous. And I don't know if it was the size of Manhattan or Dodger Stadium. I don't know. But I do know that it looked like in the center of it, it looked like an upside down city. Remember when the ship comes in Close Encounters, the big mothership comes in and it flips over, and it's, it's got like all these protrusions on the bottom of it. That's what it looked like. That's why when I first saw Close Encounters, I just shook and cried through like the whole movie. I mean, I just lost it. My friends that went with me to see it thought I had lost my mind. They didn't know how to handle me. I'm in a theater. I can't stop crying. They've got no tissues. I mean, it was like, oh my God,
Wow.
you know.
Yeah.
And but anyway, this vessel was very long, had a
Hmm.
point on the front. I can't remember exactly. I think the back of it was rather blunted, kind of squared off a little bit. But it did come to some shape. But it was followed, like escorted, by 2, 4, 6, 8. I think probably 10 or 12. I didn't count them. I was so transfixed
Right.
on what looked like an upside down city. But I do remember that they looked like a burnished bronze or platinum. No seams, no windows, and they were all in geometric shapes: a circle, a square, a triangle, a rectangle, a pentagon. I mean, they were in all the shapes that we know as geometry,
Hmm.
and absolutely silent as it went overhead. Absolutely silent, all of them.
Wow.
And they were so beautiful, so beautiful. And then I remember, the only thing I remember after that was being in the kitchen. I don't know how I got in there or when I walked back in the house. But I was pulling back the lace curtains and looking out the window. And my mother asked me what I was looking at, and I didn't answer her. And I didn't tell her for months what I had seen, until she and I saw something that was only, inexplicable, unless, of course, extraterrestrials existed. So it was, and we had that experience together. And actually, my whole family came to find us because we were missing. And we were outside in the backyard watching them dart all over. Like they looked like they were like measuring or, doing a grid of the earth or something. They
Hmm.
looked like they were very busy. There were 3 of them. And once my whole family got out there, and nobody talked about it, we just watched. And then all of a sudden, they all came back together again and created one big ball of light. And it was like they had a conversation with each other, like, okay, time to split the scene. And all 3 of them just took off in a split second in different directions, leaving a streak of that center light behind them. And so, yeah, and that was 2 of the 3 incidents that I recall that happened at the farm. And also the blue light that came down the chimney and then would
Hmm.
make a right turn, would snuff out the fire in the fireplace, and then make a right turn, bounce out into the room, was a tube of blue light. And then it would go and retract and go back up the chimney, and then the fire would start again. What the, WTF moments of
Right.
my life
Right.
before I even knew that word. Um, yeah. So this has been a part of my life my whole life. And
Right.
yes, you no truer words when you say, yes, I embrace it. Oh my God, do I embrace it? Because now I know who I am, where I'm from,
Hmm.
and why I'm here. And
Right.
I wandered for 4+ decades on
Hmm.
this planet, feeling totally out of sorts, absolutely a foreigner on this planet. And now I know why I'm here.
Hmm.
And so that makes all the difference to me. And I'm
Hmm.
not here for everybody. I'm not.
No.
The message that I bring, the message that you bring, we're not here for everyone.
No.
There are, people who are actively attempting to spiritually ascend, that their spiritual ascension to higher dimensions, to other realms, is an imperative. It's compulsory. It is forefront in their consciousness. And they spend time each day working in their inner sanctum, working, right where they need to be
Hmm.
to expedite that process, which we all know never ends.
Right.
So it's a real commitment that, millions and millions of us have made, and mostly contactees. And I'll tell you another thing, Deb. I was at Vulture City Paracon in well, Vulture City. It's an old abandoned gold mine up in the high desert of Arizona, just about 2 hours north of Phoenix, maybe a little more. And the connections that I made with the people that I met at that event lifted me up in a way I cannot express, I cannot explain, but I am telling you, you to me to you, at least 50% of the people that I interacted with and engaged with last weekend were hybrids. At least 50%.
Yeah.
At least. All you have to do is look in their eyes. I mean,
Right.
they don't have auras. You and I both see people's auras. It's just, common. We see their color and their vibration as well as them. These people didn't have auras. They had coronas with a defined border around them. And they
There's a
just walking
difference.
into my tent, and I'm like, and I had said something to the group about being able to help people open their third eye. The line was so long that we had to move things around to let people into the tent so that they weren't waiting for an hour outside in the hot sun. I was like,
Wow.
what's going on here?
So
What is going on here?
that's proof that people are waking up. And not only are they waking up, people are working to wake up.
Yes,
When
they're working
somebody
to
is
wake up.
offering from the heart to help them open their third eye, and they're
Oh,
lining up in the hot sun,
yeah.
that
I just
that's
cleared away.
beautiful.
I asked my neighbors, right next to me in the next tent, can people wait in here? Well, and I mean, there had to be 40 or 50 people that lined up
Wow.
to have this done. Like, word got around real quick. And we did an investigation in I was in the boarding house, and we were there from like 8 o'clock at night till 1 o'clock in the morning on Saturday night. And it was so active, and all the gizmos and the gadgets were just going off like crazy. And the last session, I had gotten so comfortable with one of the spirits that she and I just had a conversation. And these little machines, I mean, it was like a light show in the middle of the floor. It was amazing. Everybody that was present will never forget it. I had a conversation with her.
Wow, that's beautiful. I wish I could have been there.
I wish you could have too. I wish everybody I
Sounds
know
amazing.
could have been there to experience this. But
Right.
whether they like it or not, I'm going back
Mhm.
next year. I'll bring
Well, I
my
might
posse with me.
I was gonna say I might have to go with you. I love
Yeah,
Arizona. There was a point in time, that I planned on moving to Arizona, and
I
I
couldn't
went
live there.
there.
It would kill me.
Yeah, I
Too hot,
went
too
there
dry.
looking for my space, and, what I found is I loved it, but I felt very closed in the mountains. It's beautiful, but it's hot and it's dry, and, that part I kind of like, but not the feeling of being closed in the mountains.
Yeah, no, it's a great place to visit. I wouldn't want to live there, but I have to tell you, the night of my birthday, or the night before my birthday, was the rise of the full hunter's moon. And it looked like you could just reach out and touch
Oh,
that
I'll bet.
orb in the sky when it came up over those mountains.
Oh, yeah.
And this is cattle country, and all the cows are free range. So the speed limit on all the roads is like 20 or 25 miles an
Okay.
hour. They have cameras everywhere. So in case a cow ever gets hit by a car, they know who to blame. And it's a $3,500 fine. In other words, the cows own the country. We're borrowing it. We have to crawl
Right.
through it to get where we're going. And I'll tell you, the detail that you can see in the topography and the landscape at 20 or 25 miles an hour is amazing.
Mhm.
And I thought that was an interesting metaphor for life. As we're heading there, and I'm thinking about it, and I'm hanging out with Sam Beltrusis, and just a whole really great guests that they had at the event. And I just got quiet and I was thinking about it. And I said, to myself, uh, you can see a whole lot more of the world, and a lot of it makes more sense if you just slow down. Just slow down. We're always running 100 miles an hour. All of us are. We have this and this and this and this and this to do in a single given day. And if we don't get it done, we feel like abject failures.
Right.
That's not, I mean, I don't want to have on my gravestone, I finally got my to-do list done. Really? What I'd rather have on my gravestone, if I even have one, is this took longer than expected. Be right back.
There you go. I love that. I love that. So that's going to lead us right into be right back. What is your feelings on past lives?
I don't know, but I do think that in some way my attachment to the farm factors into that, because I did see an apparition in the farm and I was 17 years old when I saw her on the hearthstone in the parlor. And everybody else in the family saw her, but they saw a side view of her. I looked straight into her face, and she was me as an old woman. I mean, she was like the spitting image duplication of me, but more like my age now. And I didn't even tell my mother about that, because I didn't want her or anybody else in my family to think that in some way they were doomed to come, back to the house as long as it exists and live, through it again.
Right.
And I was still kind of, for me, the jury was out on reincarnation at that age. But when I told my mother, it was on moving day that I told my mother that I saw her face, and she smiled at me, and it was so sweet and tender and loving. And she had a head full of gray hair, and it was wound up in a bun on the top of her hair. And my hair used to be really, really long and thick. And had I had that much hair, I could have worn it that way too.
Right.
But I told Mom the day that we moved out, and she just grabbed a hold of me and hugged me. And she said, I always knew we bought this house for you.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And we're still discovering things. Deb and Andrea need 2 hours. Okay.
Usually
okay,
we do.
Maria, I'll just have her back on my show, A World Awakening.
Yeah.
And, we'll just make that like, our cosmic connection point, and just keep going. But, one of the things that I wanted to share again about Cody and Satori, because I am so blown away by their
young
pure
people.
love connection with spirit. It is so beautiful. But in 2017, when my baby sister April died so suddenly and tragically, that Christmas, the following Christmas, was difficult for us. It was. We were sad and somber, and it, nobody really felt like celebrating per se, but we tried to make the most of it. And Christine, my sister, I was up in Georgia with Chris and my mother. My father flew up for the holiday week, Christmas to New Year's. And so the four of us were all together in the house. And Dad and Chris were getting ready because, there were so many great grandchildren, like so many, that we go over to the biggest house in the family, which is my niece's, Steph, and have our big Christmas gathering there. It's only about 20 minutes away from Christine's house. So it was time to start boxing up. I was cooking in the kitchen. They were boxing up the gift bags for each one of the kids, got their own bag from all of us. So we were all putting our stuff that we brought for them into their bags. And Mom was just sitting there, just supervising from her chair. And everything was fine. It all went great. and we put the box aside. And then she wanted to stuff the stockings. And there were 4 stockings, 3 for the cats and 1 for the dog. And Sammy was April's dog. And when April passed away, Mom and Christine kept him. And he was staying with them when April was supposed to go to the hospital and have surgery, but she never made it to the hospital. And so Chris had been picking up dog toys for him so that he could have a nice Christmas, because that's how we are with our animals. And she went to stuff his stocking, and the bag of dog toys that was on the kitchen bar was gone. And we looked and we looked and we looked, and then we looked some more, and we couldn't find the dog toys. They were gone. And I said, "Oh, Chris, you just mislaid them. Don't worry, we'll find them in the morning." Because it was late, we were tired, so we all went to bed. The next morning we get up, the dog toys are not on the bar. We don't know where they are. We looked around some more, and then we just said, "Oh, they'll show up. He doesn't know. They'll just show up." And so we did our gift exchange between the 4 of us. And one of the gifts Christine gave Dad had a piece of green and a piece of red tissue paper on top of it. So he lifted it off and he threw it in the trash can right next to her desk. He was sitting in the big chair in front of her desk. Well, we emptied out under the tree. Everything else was already packed to go to the big thing. And it was empty under the tree. Empty. And when we got home, and we took Sammy with us, of course, and he had toys and presents there. And, so when we got home, Christine just plopped down into her recliner. And when she threw it back, she could see under the tree. And she's like, "There's a bag under the tree. There's a bag under the tree. Oh my God, who did we forget to bring a gift to?" And I said, "No one, Chris. Everything was gone. I cleaned out from under the tree this morning. It was empty." And she's like, "Oh my God, that's one of my decorative bags that she had bought years and years before in Manhattan. And they were just for decoration. I mean, they would never be given away. They were artwork." Right. And she's like, "What's one of my decorative bags doing out?" Because she didn't even open the carton that she keeps them in that year. And there it was up under the tree. And I crawled up and handed it out to her. And Sammy sniffing all around it, sniffing. He knew his toys were in there. And she pulled off the paper, the green and yellow, green and red paper that had been picked up from the top of the trash and put in on top of the toys. And there were all of Sammy's toys. And we looked at each other and all of us said, April did this. April did it. Well, we knew it. Okay, it's 6 years later now? And I'm up at, 5 minutes. Oh my God, Bill. And I'm up with Cody and Satori. And April comes through. And these are the words that she leaves with them. Christmas. Chris. Bag. Toys.
Oh my gosh.
Dog. Sammy. Me.
She did it.
She did it.
And she confessed.
She stole Christine's dog toys so that she could give Sammy a Christmas gift that year. How powerful a spirit must my sister be? So that's my story. And I didn't mean to use up all of our time. I didn't mean it. I'm sorry. Where did that hour go? Where did that hour go?
I know it always goes so fast with us, but even 2 hours with us goes fast. And one thing I noticed when we were hanging out, well, every time we get to hang out, it seems like we'll be together and it feels like we've been together like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And 2 or 3 hours are gone.
Yeah.
How does that happen?
I don't know, but it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. We'll go outside for a cigarette. And of course, we end up talking and having several, but hours go by.
Hours.
They go by. Yeah. But oh my gosh. Yeah. We're getting down on time here. That's amazing. And, one of these days I would love to do some work with Cody and Satori. And
you'll have that opportunity. I know you
I
will.
can't wait. They're
Yeah.
amazing. I love what their love
Yes.
represents and brings out.
Yes.
I love that April came through the way that she did. She's a remarkable woman. A
Yes, she
markable?
is.
Okay.
Yes. Present tense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, gosh, Annie, thank you so much for being on with me. I'm sorry it was only an hour, but
It's okay.
you know, we'll do it again on here and on your show. And speaking of your shows, let's tell everybody where they can find you.
Oh yes, on A World Awakening on KGRA, the best platform in the universe.
Yes.
And that is from 9 to 11 on Friday nights. And then I do Soul School Sojourn on Monday evenings with Jeff Turner, a brilliant, beautiful soul, if there ever was one. And it's it's just an hour, but it's a great way for people to start the week, just to decompress. And last week's episode was one of my favorites, actually. So, check it out. I've reposted it on my Facebook page, and I love you all. And Deb, thank you so much for bringing me on. It's my honor and my privilege. Every moment I spend with you is my honor and my privilege.
Ditto, my friend.
And my
Ditto.
joy.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you coming on. And yeah, we'll go back and forth. It's great being on KGRA because we can do this. Yeah. So yeah, everybody look for Andrea's shows on Monday and Friday. We will be back with Mystical Awakenings next Thursday night. And we're going to start exploring some experiencers.
Good.
And yeah, I won't tell a lot about it, but tune in next week, same time, same place. Andrea, you take care. I love you dearly. Everybody out there, I didn't see the questions because I'm, not paying attention to that. I don't go to that part. Bill does that. So know that we love you.
Yes.
So everybody take care. Tune in next week. Big love to everybody. Keep your eyes to the skies. And may all of your awakenings be mystical. Good night, everybody.
Good night.